Bugs.
Yeah, maybe I won't remember.
We're giving us too long a name. So we'll call you Bugs.
How about Stanislavski?
Yeah.
Stanislavski is my last name.
Mine is easier. Just leave them.
But there was so many when I was growing up, so that's why I got all the Polish names from Leo. A lot of Polish names. Lugaski, Stanislavski, Venturowski.
Oh, yeah, I didn't have surgery last week. They put it off until the 27th.
What do you gotta have?
Look down,
On my leg.
On your
on your leg.
What are they gonna do with it?
Put in stents.
Really?
Vivian and Helen Anderson.
You got stints down there too? Oh my gosh.
I have stents in one leg.
Really?
Yeah, they said it was,
Unless you got arteries, they can have stints. I don't know.
I wish it'd done the, I suppose they couldn't get rid of
Norma
that.
Hagen.
Yeah.
Boy got married to them.
Yeah, they
Also,
got
they
two
run
different
into-
they do
where's
it.
the way they-
Arteries, I suppose.
Thank you.
Norma Higgins' son.
It's a boy.
Fancy, I don't even use kitchen cloths.
Son, he was
He
quite
was the
old.
one who married to Reed.
To Sandy.
I was gonna see what she says.
Go ahead, cut yours.
Are we ready?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we are.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you came out today. My name is Perry Vogel, and I come from Grand Forks today, and I started up the Purple Martin Association of the Dakotas back in December when I was on leave from work after having an ankle surgery. It was one of those things that I just needed to do because I've been a Purple Martin landlord since 2001, and I've been really passionate about Purple Martins, and they've brought a lot of joy to my life. My late brother had built my first Purple Martin house, which he had built out of plywood, and it didn't last too many years, so I redesigned a house and replaced that house and got another one going. In 2001, when I started, I had 4 pair. In 2011, I had 29 pair. They fledged 109 young. They had laid 155 eggs. Not all of those eggs hatched, and subsequently, that's why they only fledged 109 young. Purple Martins are one of the largest of the swallow family. They are the largest of the swallow family. The adult male is the one that is entirely purple, and I saw in your backyard you have a Purple Martin house, and I know that Heidi had told me that you have Purple Martins in that house as well. Purple Martins regularly forage over fields. They are exclusive insectivores. That means they only eat insects, and they only eat insects on the wing. I've seen them foraging over potato fields, small grain fields, sugar beet fields, including soybean fields, corn fields, sunflower fields. So they are a really beneficial bird to have because they are, like I said, exclusive insectivores, and no farmer likes insects. Mannington Mills in New Jersey, they are manufacturers of floor coverings. They have installed Purple Martin houses to control the insects. They use double lock screen doors to control insects, but they still had to use pesticides. So they put up 16 gourd racks, and what gourds are these devices right here. And this is where one Purple Martin family would live. And they would raise up from 3 to 7 young, and they would be feeding those young all summer. Hordes and hordes of insects. When they put those Purple Martin houses up, the need for those double lock doors and the pesticides had diminished. So it's an economic and it's an eco-friendly way of controlling insects. Purple Martins are well known to be one of the cleanest birds. In any instance, they will try to drop their droppings away from their nests because they want to keep the area that they live as clean as possible to prevent predators from being attracted to their nest sites. One of the things that is attracted to the purple martin's nest site, no matter what you do, is the English house sparrow. Unfortunately, the English house sparrow was introduced into the United States in 1850 and 1875, and has decimated native cavity nesting bird populations ever since. A little later, almost at the very end of the slide, we're going to revisit talking about the English house sparrow and the European starling. Those two birds are non-native to the United States. They are not protected by any laws because they were introduced, and they are considered a pest species in the United States. The first thing that I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about what purple martins route they use to get down to their wintering grounds. This is an adult female purple martin. You will see that she's got the gray chest. Now, not all purple martins with the gray chest are adults. They may be subadults, which means they were fledged last year and came back, or they may be a female. The way you can tell if it's an adult female is by the arrows that they have on the undertail. They've got little arrows that point to their tail, little dark arrows. This is a picture that was taken of the other co-founder in South Dakota of the Purple Martin Association of the Dakotas, Paul Mamanga's home. He's got a gourd rack and a T14 house, which is made out of western red cedar. As you see, all of the housing here that we have in the pictures and here in person is white. Purple martins over the years have been predisposed to the color white. Back in the day when Native Americans settled the earth, they would put up natural gourds, which would kind of pale to or fade in the sun to a white color. And then when the European settlers came to the United States, white was the color of freedom. They put up a White House in Washington, D.C. They put up white houses for purple martins. And over the evolution of that traditional shift to human-supplied housing, they became addicted to the color white. We're just going to take you along this route. As you see, that little yellow line is moving. It started up in Columbia, South Dakota, and it went all the way down to the Pantanal in Brazil. And it's this female, number 223184. She was, we're going to call her Bertha, because it's a good, strong German name, and the name of my grandmother. And I think scientists name purple martins a big, long series of numbers, but for the purposes of this presentation, and I'm not a scientist, it's sure a lot easier to remember her name as Bertha. On April 27th of 2011, that female was recaptured at her home nest site at Paul Mamanga's house. She traveled 5,000 miles round trip to get all the way down to Brazil, and actually it's maybe more like 10,000 miles round trip, all powered on her own energy and without a map, and she was able to find the exact location where she fledged young the previous years. That's just an amazing feat for a bird that weighs 55 ounces. This female, like I said, her number is 2231-84518. Scientifically, she crossed the Gulf of Mexico in both directions. That is a 2-day flight and did not stop at any one point, which is quite amazing. A very rapid initial migration to Mexico within 5 days. So imagine leaving the northern part of South Dakota and getting down to Mexico in 5 days. She did have a little vacation, a 2-week vacation in the Yucatan Peninsula, and I don't blame her at all. She used 4 different wintering sites, as you'll see on the map, and we'll talk about those wintering sites as we move along, and covered approximately 5,000 miles in about 16 days. 330 miles per day which includes a few stop days. So that is very, very fast for a little bird. How do we know all of this about purple martins? We are doing scientific research, and we are attaching backpacks to purple martins. Those backpacks are called a geolocator. They're about the size of an ink pen, the cap of an ink pen, and they weigh less than a dime. So they strap on under the legs and under the wings, and they don't inhibit them from flying at all. And what those geolocators do is they measure the sunrise and the sunset. Now, if they drop or lose that backpack in their wintering ground, all that data is lost. So we have to recapture those same birds in the spring when they return, take that information, download it into a computer, and from those sunrise and sunset times, scientists are able to determine the longitude and latitude of that bird. And that's how we came up with these maps. Here again is that map. We're going to start on that northern point up in Columbia, South Dakota, and on August 20th. And that's a picture of the house again. And in 3 days, he will be near St. Mary, Louisiana. And St. Mary, Louisiana is one of those places that, let's see if I can get that information. As of 2000, the population was 5,000, was about 50,000 people, so about the size of Grand Forks. The racial makeup was 60% white and 30% African American. And as you can see, it's a really boggy area. It's got a lot of that Spanish moss growing on the trees. The purple martin basically spent just one night in this area. Got down there in 3 days, spent one night in that area, and then it was off to the north, the northern Yucatan Peninsula. This is that 3-day flight, or that 2-day flight across the Gulf of Mexico. The northern Yucatan Peninsula has this, Progreso is a port city, and it's got this bridge, and the purple martins are using this bridges like this during their migration routes. What they call these areas where they roost at night is roosts, purple martin roosts. And what they're discovering is that the purple martins are coming in, spending a night, dispersing. And new ones will come in, spend the night, and disperse. It was thought at one point that purple martins were just roosting and staying in areas for days and days and days, but actually it's the stagger and the migration that's causing it to seem like it's days and days. It's different birds that come in and move on, come in and move on, come in and move on.
It's their motel.
Yeah. For the next leg of the journey, they just go off onto the eastern part of the Yucatan Peninsula. It's called Cutzamel Island. According to Mayan legend, the home of the goddess Ichnel, islanders built temples on this island for the goddess of love and fertility. In return, the goddess of Ichnel sent swallows, her favorite bird, as a gesture of goodwill. The island, Cutzamel, is called, formerly really known as the Island of the Swallows. The island of Cutzamel is off the east coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, and it is the largest reef island in the Mesoamerican reef system. They spent 2 weeks on this island, and a little later you're going to see some pictures of what the area looks like. It's a beautiful area to spend 2 weeks.
Do people live on that?
There are some people on that island as well, yes. Northern Costa Rica, there's a river, there's a Barradal, Colorado River, and it is the second largest rainforest preserve in the country. And it protects the area, protects areas that contain hot, humid forests, mangroves, canals, marine areas, bound by the San Juan and Colorado rivers, and it's not the same Colorado River as we have here in the United States. But as you can see, purple martins are oftentimes going to be found in areas that are close to water. Not always, but rivers and lakes and streams are a good resource to have nearby when you're trying to attract purple martins. And only in the time of migration do they use trees as roosts. During the summer for their nesting sites, they have abandoned their native nesting sites in trees and moved to human-supplied housing east of the Rocky Mountains. We'll talk a little bit about that a little later. And then from Costa Rica, they go to the north central Brazil. And here they're going to spend about 20 days just hanging out. And once again, very lush area. The north central Brazil is located near the metropolitan area of Mantas, and it borders on the Amazon River. The central region has an important port which is responsible for considerable amounts of cargo in getting into the Amazon area. The next leg of the journey, they're going to go to the north part of the Pantanal. Now, this is going to be the southernmost point that this female migrates, and the Pantanal is one of the largest wetlands. And prairie lands in the United States. It is a beautiful place to visit. The only thing is, it's not a very beautiful place to visit in the rainy season because it's quite often flooded.
Is it the rainy season when they're there?
Actually not. The rainy season first starts in December and goes into January, and you can see that once the rainy season starts, they're leaving here on December 18th. So the rainy season starts and they're starting to pack their bags and move out there. Their next stop after that, they're going to be going to West Central Brazil. West Central Brazil is an equatorial climate, which means that it's within 5 degrees of the equator, and it gets at least 60 millimeters of rain each month, which is equal to about 4 inches each month. And once again, that area's got a lot of vegetation coverage, tree coverage, palm trees, rivers, very important resources for the purple martins so that they can fatten up over the winter. And then this female zigs back over to the north central Brazil. There's a dam. It's a hydroelectric dam that was built in 1985 through 1989 in the Amazon rainforest, and this is close to where they're staying. This dam was very controversial because they had to flood a lot of area, and of course, what happens to trees that are flooded? They basically become tree snags again. It's interesting that when we saw on this map that this is where they go, because tree snags are what purple martins used to nest in originally. Now, purple martins don't nest in South America. They only nest in North America. All that they're doing in South America is vacationing and having and having a good time. Having a nice winter. And then she zigs back over to the northwestern part of Brazil. The northwestern part of Brazil does not have very many inhabitants at all. It's very into the thick of the Amazon. The rainforest is natural vegetation, and it's also considered an equatorial climate there as well, because it is so close to the equator. The next stop that they're going to go, and they just spend one night there as well. Next now this is on the, I should have mentioned, starting from this point where we change colors, this is the migration back. So they're not going to spend a lot of days in any one of these areas. North Central Colombia, I had a really tough time figuring out what kind of products they grew in North Central Colombia. And then I was doing a little research in the internet, and I found that there was a bust of 40 million pounds of marijuana. So So there isn't a lot of information about where the purple martins are staying in that area. There's a lot of people. It is just on the south side of the Andes Mountains, and that mountain range goes up 50 meters above sea level. So I believe they rest up that night just to make that leg over those mountains. And they make the flight over those mountains, and they wind up in eastern Guatemala. Let's see. I don't have any information about eastern Guatemala, but again, it's very tropical. It's actually a subtropical region. Lots of vegetation for them to perch on over the night. And like I said, they only spend one night there, so it's not.
All of those climates obviously have a lot of mosquitoes.
A lot of mosquitoes.
So
Yes.
everything they need.
Everything that they need is in these climates. I mean, purple martins are an opportunistic feeder. I mean, they don't have a specialty. Any insect that's big and ugly that's flying around in your backyard, they're going to be eating. You don't have to worry about them eating your monarch butterflies or anything like that, because monarch butterflies are pretty much closer to the ground, where purple martins are flying high in the sky and feeding on insects that are what they call aerial plankton. And they're going back to Cutzamau for a couple of days. They're going to spend 3 more days there just to rest up after getting through the Andes Mountain. Earlier I had said, that the vegetation there is very thick, very lush, a very good place. These trees in particular, that's why I picked this for, very good for roosting birds because there's no leaves on them. They can get away from predators very quickly. And then they move over to the northern Yucatan Peninsula just over one day. And if they're not staying on that bridge that I talked about, this is the vegetation that they've got. They've got mangroves, which another great place for them to fatten up. The only thing is with the northern Yucatan Peninsula that I found really interesting is that they don't have any fresh water there. And purple martins actually do need fresh water. It's all salt water, so these are all saltwater mangroves.
Where was this at?
It was the Yucatan Peninsula. It's the same as earlier. It was just right up here on the Yucatan Peninsula.
So they don't get fresh water?
They don't get fresh water there, so that's why they only spend one day there. And any of the routes that I've seen. Yeah.
It looks like they go across the Gulf from
Yep, and they went across the Gulf again.
So they're 2 days without water again?
2 days, yeah.
They have no place to stop?
Well, if it rains. If it rains, the purple martins can get water from rain. They feed and drink exclusively on the wing, so they will get water from there, and they do get water from their insects that they eat. It's just that they're not dipping into the waters to get their water in those locations. St. Tammany is where Hurricane Katrina made its final landfall in the eastern St. Tammany Parish. The western eye wall passed directly over this area, and it was interesting to see. Oops, pressed the wrong button. It was interesting to see that purple martins use this area for their migration. This vegetation looks a little closer to what we have here. Tall evergreens. Grass, roads. This is not a highly populated area, but it is, populated, pretty much like maybe northwestern Minnesota here. And they make that final leg of the journey back up to Columbia, South Dakota. We're returning there on April 27th. So it took 251 days to make this trip. This is not only to make this trip, but this is their 251-day vacation, round trip.
So they spend about 100 days here,
Approximately.
approximately?
Approximately.
How many batches do they raise in that short
They
time?
up here in northern Minnesota and northern North Dakota and South Dakota, they only will do one brood.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But in some areas further south, there's some question whether it's accurate or not, but they sometimes say that they will raise two, just because of the longer breeding season.
So
Are they
how-
Well, I imagine they have to mature to be ready for that trip.
Yeah, well, here's the deal with purple martins. They're not very fast to raise their young. Their young will be in the nest from the day that they hatch until the day that they fly, 30 days. And their eggs take about 15 days to hatch. So that's 45 days already.
Yeah.
Now, if you consider 45 days of that out of the 100 that they're here, that was, they migrated back, they got their energy reserves back, they found their compartment, they found their mate, they found,
It's really amazing.
It is really amazing, yeah. And this is the adult purple martin.
do they
What is the
migrate as a
lifespan?
family?
They don't.
So those young ones are on their own?
Well, they will, once they fledge out of the nest, they will do what they call staging areas. And I know that there's a staging area up in Warroad on the pier. And what that is they will go out to a lake or a stream that has maybe some tall trees that the young can sit, and the parents can teach them how to be purple martins. Last Tuesday I was in Crookston at the natural resource area, and I heard this purple martin crying all day long. I mean, she was chirping and chirping, and I could tell that it was a young bird, and was chirping and chirping, and I'm like, what is going on? And I looked up in the tree, and this little baby bird was still wanting his parents to feed him. But his parents wanted to teach him how to be a purple martin. So I got serenaded by purple martins all day on Tuesday, and I wasn't even expecting it. The adult purple martin is entirely dark from head to toe. You can tell the adults from the females, the fledglings, because of this feature. Purple martin feathers aren't actually purple; they're black, and they reflect that color purple because of the sun. It's very similar to the bluebird that doesn't actually have a blue feather; it has a brown feather, and the iridescence comes from the feather and the way it bends the light. Once again, this is another picture, just a different angle of the site that is down in South Dakota, Paul Mamanga's place. He's got a river that kind of goes through his backyard, or close to his backyard, so that's a really great place for those parents to fledge some young, because there's some trees over there that they can teach them how to be purple martins in. We're going to take this male, 23318453. We're going to call him Oscar, because that's my grandfather's name. And he did not take the same route as the female, which is very interesting, but did make that round trip within 1 day of the female. They both left on the same day. They came back 1 day apart. They never stayed in the same spot, but made it back to the same location within a day. So now imagine taking a vacation without your spouse and coming back to the same exact spot within a day without any telephone or communications whatsoever. That is just what is amazing about these little birds. He raced down to the Yucatan Peninsula in less than a week and took a whole week vacation on the coast of Honduras. So didn't stay at the Cozumel Island. Flew to the southern part of the Pantanal, whereas the female went only to the northern part of the Pantanal, and moved northward over the wintering, occupying only 2 additional roost sites. Flew from Ecuador to Nicaragua, passing over the Pacific Ocean, which is something that I would have never imagined them to do, and took an overland route once they got back to Mexico instead of crossing the Gulf of Mexico, and visited some pretty scary places along the way. Paul Romega is doing a banding research project down in South Dakota. He is banding them, and this is really hard to see, but there is a little SD on that band. The bands are yellow, the letters are black, and this band on this, they band both legs, one with a federal silver band and one with a colored band. And the reason why they do that is the color bands are a little bit more visible to see, and you need a federal permit in order to band birds at all. So we're going to start up near Columbia, South Dakota on the 20th of August. at that very site, and they're going to make it to Central Louisiana within 3 days. In Central Louisiana, there's a park, and I have to check what the name of that park is. Chicotto State Park, which is Louisiana's largest state park, and is visited by thousands of people from all parts of the United States. And, you know, to me, to see trees growing like that in the water is just amazing, because they got those big bulbous roots that are able to survive. And this male did go across the Yucatan Peninsula. Some of the other pictures that I found of the Yucatan Peninsula show vegetation similar to a subtropical area like that. But interesting thing about the Yucatan Peninsula, it's not very mountainous. I mean, I think it only goes up about 500 feet above sea level, the whole island itself. So that would be about like what we are here. We're kind of in a low area, not very high above sea level. And then goes to northwestern Honduras and spends just a day there. Northwestern Honduras is very beautiful. And I picked this picture again too, because I mean it almost looks like those trees were used as a migration route for swallows or birds that perch on trees, because there's kind of a lack of leaves on some of those trees. Like we're up here, you don't quite see that. And on roost trees, you will see that there is going to be some damage from perching birds. And then they go over to eastern Honduras, and this is the one that I was really interested in, because you see the banana trees and the huts and the houses that they live in. And if you notice, the houses are built on stilts because it is very wet. And there's a puddle right there, so lots of food for them produced out of those waters. And then it's over to north central Colombia. North central Colombia, again, it's the same kind of area, just south of the Andes Mountains, and there they will spend a couple of days. So it seems like, you know, after they have a big journey that they do stay at a spot for a couple of days and possibly build up some reserves. And then they move on to the western part of Brazil. And again, very similar. It's part of the Amazon. It has lots of water, lots of trees. West Central Brazil. Whoops. Skip the slide. So he's taking more of a direct route, and whereas the female did a very zigzag route. And I don't know. We don't really know why they're taking different routes, or how they, or even if the same birds are taking the same routes every year. So one of the interesting things that they're going to be doing is they're going to be putting geolocators on some of the same birds this year to see if they take the same route year after year, or if they mix it up and take different routes. And West Central Brazil, very similar. I'm sure lots of rain, and a great place for the purple martins to stay. Now, for the next 80 days, they're going to spend in the southern part of the Pantanal. And here again, I guess while the female spent the same, almost some of the same days in the Pantanal. She was on the northern part of the Pantanal, and he's on the southern part of the Pantanal. Now, remember when I said earlier that the rainy season begins in December? Both the female and the male left the Pantanal area on the same exact day, December 18th, which is just shortly after that rainy season began.
Do they all leave then?
We don't know. We've only been doing these studies for a couple of years, so we're interested to see. Now, he did move over to the north central part of the Pantanal, so not really sure if he, just if it was a really heavy rain or anything that prohibited him from moving through the Pantanal or not. So, and this is kind of what that area is like. There's mountains on one side, and it's prairie that goes into the lakes and streams, and all of this area in the rainy season is probably most likely getting flooded all the way to the mountain bases over there. Now, December 28th, and they are going to start making their migration back up north, and they're going to they are making their migration back up north, but they are going to spend about 100 days just sitting in this area in west central Brazil. West central Brazil, I wish I'd have it. I really have any more information on that area. But you can see that there were rain clouds in the back, so definitely a very rainy area. Now, western Brazil, I do have information on in the first decades and into the 19th century. This area was attracted by, or people were attracted to this area for the extraction of latex, and latex became the pinnacle economy of the Amazon at that time.
Latex comes
from plants, yeah. And then he moves over to the northern Ecuador. Northern Ecuador is particularly important because it safeguards one of the few remaining examples of equatorial coastal rainforests, a much threatened ecosystem. And this isn't really a picture of necessarily rainforest, but there are a couple of very big lakes that are in that area, and very similar to the rolling mountains that we have kind of here in western North Dakota, or rolling hills. And then it's up to the eastern part of Nicaragua again. And very tropical climate there, lots of water. And then back over to central Guatemala. There's an area called the Lankan Caves. They are limestone caves, but beautiful, beautiful green waters there, colored because of these limestone caves that are there, and the purple martins get to visit this every year for about a week. East central Mexico. Now this is the place that I wouldn't want to be. Tamco is a tropical savanna climate, but when you look up this city, it's actually very high crime rates. So they're sure a lot braver than I would be. And then the purple martins move up to Stafford, Texas, and they have a shopping mall with fountains that they are roosting at. And I didn't take a picture of, but this lake is behind those mountains, and I think that shopping mall is just behind those power lines. And this is what it looks like in the evening, just as the sun is coming down when the purple martins are coming in. And they will come in, they'll fill the sky. I mean, there will be thousands of birds, and they'll settle down within about 20 minutes. But it's just I have not witnessed a real roost, but yeah, I guess it's just a real spectacle. It's just amazing to watch. And they're in Minnesota. They're doing some boat tours, just watching some of these roosts from the boats, and it's been an experience for some people. And then back up to Columbia, South Dakota. Now this bird, this is the male. He took 1 day longer than the female to get back up to the same location. And he is back home.
Okay, now, that you said they were swallows,
Yes.
do they ever congregate on a certain day in a certain place every year, like the swallows at Capistrano?
Right, yes, they do. That's what these roosts are. Now, it isn't that they necessarily, it's not like a certain day, but it's during their migration season. So this spring, it was a little earlier, and there was a place in Oklahoma City where it was at the site of the Oklahoma City bombing. They put up a park, and the purple martins had decided that that's where they wanted to make a roost. Now they, when they're in a park area like that, people are pretty sensitive to that, because there's going to be droppings, there's going to be feathers, there's going to be noise at night. So they relocated them to a different area that's a little less developed. But yeah, I mean that's what those roosts are. Is they come there, they spend the night, and then they fly off, and then more will come in and spend the night, and then those will move on. But those roosts will last anywhere between a week to 3 weeks, maybe even 6 weeks sometimes.
Well, at Capistrano, I think they come back every year on the exact same day.
Really?
Well, maybe not the whole group, but they always know when to expect them.
Yeah. Well, and these roosts, as we get to understanding them more and understanding where they're spending their time, we're probably going to find that there's very similar information about these purple martins as well. This is just a map put out by the Breeding Bird Survey, and as you see up here in northern Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, it barely even shows that we have any purple martins. I've been pretty lucky that I attracted purple martins, and then I put up a brand new house here on the Greenway in Grand Forks, and I attracted purple martins. I actually attracted 3 pair who fledged 12 babies. So it's exciting. Sometimes we're wondering if these maps are all that accurate too, because these breeding bird surveys are on routes, not necessarily in towns where purple martins are being raised. The unfortunate thing about this picture now is this is where anything in red is where the purple martin population is decreasing. And you will see that in the Twin Cities area, there's a very active purple martin conservation group. And up in Winnipeg, there's a conservation group. And up in Alberta, there's a conservation group. So those areas are all going in the right direction, where purple martin population is increasing instead of decreasing. In Illinois and Wisconsin, the population is decreasing pretty dramatically because of the site competitors from the European starling and the English house sparrow. And in a couple of slides, we're going to see how those populations are in those areas, and it's just a really sad situation for those states. Purple Martin Conservation Association out of Erie, Pennsylvania puts out these maps every year, and they will track the migration route as it goes north. Now you can see there's a purple area, and that's where you will see an adult purple martin, and the yellow area shows where you will see a subadult purple martin. You can, after watching purple martins, you'll be able to tell what the difference is, and I think I have some slides a little later that we can talk about that a little bit. Purple martins traditionally nested in tree snags, and those are just basically burnt out forests. And unfortunately, when European settlers settled the United States, we started cutting down those forests, either through clean farming or through urban sprawl, and the purple martins started to lose their native nesting areas. And this is what we have today in backyards. This is this particular house is one that I put up on the greenway on Earth Day, and the one that we had fledged the young in. As you see, this little image down below, that's the hole that we recommend that you use for purple martins because of the European starling. And depending on the house that you have, European starlings aren't going to be as much of a problem. This is a McEwen crescent, and what this does is it doesn't allow the European starling to get in to that nest cavity. And they recommend it for any nest cavity that is bigger than 6x6, because European starlings are attracted to those bigger nest cavities. Now, these McEwen crescents don't stop the English house sparrow, but they will stop the European starling. I use exclusively these type of holes in my colonies, and I don't have any problems with the European starlings at all. They just will try to get into those holes and they won't succeed, and they'll just eventually leave.
It can't be a very big bird then.
No, it isn't a very big bird. Yeah, if you looked at that, let's go to the previous slide real quick. From the top of that hole, from the top to the bottom of that hole is 1 3/16 of an inch. It's made out of a 3-inch circle. So yeah.
It isn't even 1.5 inches.
No, not even 1.5. If you've got a purple martin house that you're putting up, brand new, the recommendation is to build kind of a pre-nest. Purple martins are secondary cavity nesters, which means they don't build their own nest hole. They used old woodpecker holes, which already had woodpecker shavings in it, and then they would lay their eggs on top of those woodpecker shavings and add the leaves and add some nesting material. But they wouldn't excavate the hole itself. So they're used to having some sort of a nesting material in their site. One of the mistakes I see that people do is they will put up a purple martin house and it's brand new and it's perfectly clean and it's just beautiful and shiny, and they won't attract purple martins for 8 years. And then finally it'll look a little rusty and almost worn down, and all of a sudden you're going to get purple martins because because they're not used to that perfectly pristine look. I actually put mud in my purple martin nest boxes. I take a big old paint stick and I mix garden, just plain old garden dirt, mix it up the consistency of brownie batter, and I stick that paint stick in that hole and scrape it off in the inside. I say that this makes that house look used, and it works for me. It's worked several times. Purple martins are predisposed to nest where they know successful nests have happened, because they don't want to nest in a new space and then lose their babies and then go all the way to Brazil and all the way back and have nothing to show for it. That's why they want to nest in spots that are used. And if you can convince them that your house is used by using a little bit of trickery, that's just fine. Purple martins like wide open spaces. This is a picture of my colony as it was last year when I had 29 pairs. I had a little board rack. I had a perching tree for them to sit on. This little black box down here is a little bat house that doesn't have anything to do with purple martins, but it's sure fun to have. And I've got that unit, and that house this is just part of that house. I reduced the size of my house this year just to that top unit, so that I could hopefully disperse these purple martins into more public areas, because I don't want to put all of my birds in one yard. I want them to be around the community. So the one thing that purple martins like is wide open spaces, 40 to 60 feet away from the nearest tree. If the trees are too close, they recommend either finding a different location for the house or to raise the house up a little higher. I don't know, with these Minnesota, North Dakota winds, I wouldn't raise the house up any higher than 20 feet. And that's plenty high. So if you don't have the right yard for it, I'd recommend, finding a neighbor who would let you put up a house in their area, or I'm putting up houses in public areas such as the Greenway in Grand Forks, and it was a beautiful spot to put a Purple Martin house. I said earlier that Purple Martins eat exclusively on the wing, and then I'm showing you a picture of Purple Martins later on in a feeding tray. Well, Purple Martins do have a physiological need for both calcium and grit. So in that feeding tray, I put oyster shells, egg shells, sand, and a little bit of gravel, just for them to get their supply of grit. Purple Martins are often casualties on roads because they aren't very good with flying quickly, and they have very short legs. So their flight method is to fall, and that's how they get their speed. So if they're on the ground already, imagine how hard it would be to get up off the ground. They do go on the ground to pick up twigs and twigs and sticks for their nest, but for the most part, they prefer to be up in an area that's a little safer from predators, such as cats or anything else. Purple Martins have a feeding style called it's called a hawker feeding style. That means that they're going to be flying when they catch their insects. They're not going to be sitting perched on a deck or a pole waiting for an insect to fly by and then going down to swoop at it. They're going to be flying already and just searching for that, similar to the way a hawk soars in the air. And when you watch Purple Martins soaring in the air on a summer day, it's amazing to watch them ride those air currents, because you will very seldom even see them flap their wings, and then they'll just circle and circle and circle, and then when they caught an insect, they'll or want to come back into the house, they'll tuck their wings in, and they'll actually free fall, and then they'll open up their wings and zoom into their nest cavities. Like I said earlier, they eat insects on the wing, such as wasps, moths, flies, grasshoppers, bees, ballooning spiders, midges, dragonflies, damselflies, cicadas, stink bugs, beetles, butterflies. And the one thing I would say is that anything on that list, except for possibly butterflies, I wouldn't want flying in my backyard. And there's a Heinz emerald dragonfly that is endangered, and you don't think of dragonflies as being endangered, but they live in fen wetlands, which are located in Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, Missouri, and Alabama. Fen wetlands are similar to bogs, except for they are spring-fed and less alkali, providing more diverse plant and animal populations. But as you saw on the map, the Purple Martins are not very populated in those areas where this endangered dragonfly is. The Colorado potato beetle is one of the most destructive leaf-feeding pests on potatoes in the commercial potato fields and in backyard gardens. And earlier I said that they do eat beetles as well. The one thing that we are doing is we're trying to understand what caused the decline. And I just picked a pesticide that I saw some really heavy usage here in the Red River Valley on potatoes. And I know that there used to be a roost in Grand Forks that has since demised. And this full-rate pesticide or insecticide is used mainly to control the Colorado potato beetle. And right on the label, it's right on the label, and I'll read it to you. It says the environmental hazards. This pesticide is very highly toxic to fish and wildlife. Do not apply directly to water or areas where surface water is present or to areas below the mean high water mark. Okay, so I'm wondering what really that would be in the Red River Valley, because we used to be a lake. So it says do not contaminate the water, dispose of the environmental wastewater, or rinsate. Birds and mammals may be killed if granules are not properly covered with soil in areas. I really worry about pesticides like that, especially when I see them being used so heavily in a Red River Valley area, knowing that this area used to be a lake. And I don't know where we wouldn't have rivers or streams that this stuff wouldn't get into. Purple martins drink exclusively on the wing. I love this picture of this female martin just grabbing a drink off of a stream. And purple martins mainly will pick up sticks and use those for their nest. Landlords can supply their purple martins with nesting materials such as dried pine needles, straw, twigs. So I actually don't have any straw. I use just plain old straw that you get at an animal supply store that they use for horses or whatever, and I'll put that straw in those nest boxes just so that they have something to start off with. Male purple martins will take green leaves and line the nest with green leaves a few days before the female starts laying her eggs, and he will supply that nest with green leaves for the duration of the incubation. And they think that they supply those green leaves to raise the humidity for those eggs so that they don't dry out. In this particular nest, she laid 4 eggs. The eggs are 25 millimeters long and about 17 millimeters wide. They are oval to long oval, and oftentimes you can tell the age of the bird by the size of the eggs. The older females will have a little wider egg, and the younger females will have a little narrower egg. And that's not always 100%, but quite often you will find that. Also, the older females will build more elaborate nests, and the younger females will sometimes not even build a nest. They will just lay their eggs right on the floor of the compartment. So that's why it's important to add a little bit of nesting material on there so that those eggs aren't rolling around and they have a little bit better of a chance to survive. I had a male purple martin who was a very protective man, and he, on hatch day, those little pink babies are just hatching, and underneath him you can still see an unhatched egg. He would protect that nest the entire time I would check it. And the one thing that I forgot to mention is that my pole goes up and down on a winch and pulley system, so I can check my nest boxes several times a day if I have to, but it's recommended to check them at least once every 5 days. He would stay in the nest cavity while I would do the nest checks, and when I would raise up the house, he would stay in there until the female would come, and then he would leave. So the males actually can't sit on the eggs. They don't develop a brood patch to keep them warm, but they are very protective and they are very helpful. Both the males and the females feed the young and take care of the nest once the young hatch. These are the 4 babies that were hatched on the Greenway, and they just fledged within the last 2 weeks. I was really happy to get this snapshot because I had all 4 of them with their mouths open, and you can see that their mouths are yellow. The insides of their mouths are yellow, and that's like a great big target to the parents saying, "Feed me, feed me." It's really the goal of getting those bugs in there.
Oh boy.
These are, I think they should have fledged on that day. But sometimes they're a little bit slower, and they just, purple martins will feed their babies so much that they weigh more than the adults, and they actually have to lose weight before they start flying. So it's sort of funny. Sometimes the young look bigger than the adults, and that's because they are. Because they fed them so much, and they get them big and fat, and then they have to lose weight before they can fly. The parents will actually stop feeding them for a few days, and I don't know how long it really takes them to convince them to move on or out of the nest. But the one on the Greenway, I stopped by last Saturday, and at 3 o'clock, he was just crying and crying and crying and crying, and I was thinking, what is going on in this nest box? So I lowered down the house and I checked into it. He was the only one in the nest. So his other 3 siblings had already left, but he was crying because he was left behind. So I went out to Turtle River and I did the nest checks out there, and came back around 5 o'clock, and he had left by then. So I knew he had fledged last Saturday, and that was the picture of those 4 babies, the 4 babies that had the naked babies with the yellow mouth. One of those was the exact same nest that just fledged last Saturday.
And how many days did you say from birth to hatching?
It takes from the time that the last egg is laid. It takes 15 to 18 days for them to hatch, and then it takes them 30 days from the time that they're hatched until they leave the nest.
So mom and dad has to feed them all that time?
All that time for 30 days, yep. And they'll make 60 to 80 trips a day feeding those young. In addition to feeding those youngs, they have to carry away fecal sacs. I had said earlier that purple martins are known for their cleanliness. One of the things that they have done, they've evolved what they call these fecal sacs, and it's a gelatin sac that contains the baby's waste. And for the first few days, baby purple martins aren't very good at digestion, so the parents will actually eat their waste. After that, they will carry the waste out in these sacks, and they'll carry it usually around 20 yards away from the nest, and just drop it in an open field or an open area. They typically don't drop fecal waste in water areas like the grackle does. So your bird baths and all that stuff are safe from the purple martins, your swimming pools, because they use those areas for actually drinking. This is a staging area. This is when the babies have fledged. The parents will line their children up on the branches and say, now we're going to learn how to be purple martins. And usually a staging area is going to be close to a waterway with lots of insects, and they'll take a couple of their fledglings out and they'll fly over and show them how to catch insects. And usually you'll see staging areas during the afternoon, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And you can tell the difference between a staging area and a roost, because a roost happens just at sundown. And this is what a roost looks like. So very similar. They're coming in and they're going to be spending the night. Quite often purple martins will nest in cattail reeds or in trees, and in Erie, Pennsylvania, they've got a lake that has cattail reeds that they have purple martins that nest in those. They don't nest in those reeds, but they just roost in those trees overnight. This is the European starling. This was the European starling that was introduced by Shakespearean enthusiasts in 1890. They released 100 birds in Central Park, and in 50 years they had populated the United States from coast to coast, decimating native cavity nesting birds. Quite often they will refer to this as the scum beak because of that piercing yellow bill. And that piercing yellow bill will kill adult purple martins. They will eat the babies. They will destroy the eggs. it's just a tragedy that we introduced such a destructive species, all because we wanted to release the birds named by Shakespeare's work. And if you see in the United States, they are very populous, a lot more populated than the purple martin. And if you see in Illinois and Wisconsin, it's almost like the trains brought them into the Chicago area. And quite often, the U.S. Department of Agriculture will poison European starlings if they can find a spot where they're feeding, such as at feedlots. A couple of times, you've maybe heard magazine articles or newspaper articles, that 300 European starlings found dead in Yankton, South Dakota. Well, that was because they were poisoned at a feedlot to try to control that population.
So why are there areas where there don't seem to be any?
In the mountains and in the deserts. So
What about down south?
here,
Like on the south, by Florida?
yeah, well, this would be the desert. And,
Right in there?
I don't know. I'm not sure why there's areas that don't have any.
If you want to get rid of them, that would be a thing to find out.
Yeah, maybe. It might just be the climate there as well. And you can see that the populations are up and down. I mean, it's really hard to tell. In that Florida area that you were mentioning, that populations are going down. So it could be disease, it could be anything that could be getting them in those areas. But in other areas such as western North Dakota, the populations are going up. The English house sparrow is a very similar story. They released some of these birds in New York City. The English house sparrow is a non-native species, not protected by any laws as well. And you'll see that it's pretty populated also in the United States for a bird that was not native to the United States. And this one, interestingly, seems to be more close to where St. Louis. St. Louis seems to be a real breeding area for them. The one thing that we're noticing about the the English house sparrow is their populations are decreasing. So we're not exactly sure why, but for purple martin landlords and for bluebird lovers and tree swallow lovers, all we are pretty happy about seeing that because this is what the English house sparrow does to purple martin eggs. They will find a purple martin nest and they will just take the egg out and just throw it out, and they will nest right over the top of a purple martin nest. And for no other reason, they don't even eat the eggs; they just throw them out. This was my house when I set it up this spring. Had a double rainbow over it, so I had to share that with you. One of the things that we do with the English house sparrows and European starlings, like I said, I use these crescent-shaped entrance holes. But for the English house sparrow, we have to get rid of those through trapping in Grand Forks because you can't use any sort of you can't even use pellet guns in Grand Forks. I don't know about your area here, but there's a lot of catch-alive traps that I use, and you set the trap, you put the gourd up, and the English house sparrow goes in there, and that little trap door goes down. The bird isn't injured or anything, so if a martin or something does get in there, you just release it. If it's an English house sparrow, the only way to really control them at your colony is euthanasia. This is an example of the house that you see there. It's just one of the units. The units are 7.5 inches high, 7.5 inches wide, and 11.5 inches deep. And I use a very similar insert box trap for this with a little trap door. The English house sparrow goes in and the trap door goes down. You'll see I have a little nesting material in here and an egg. This is actually a English house sparrow egg. And sometimes when they lay eggs in the house, you can trap them a little bit more easily. And I basically put the nest, I took deconstructed the English house sparrow nest and wrapped it around this nest box trap to trap them. And then you can remove them.
What do you do with them then, they're trapped?
They're just euthanized. Cedar dog bedding works as a really good nesting material for the purple martins because it's got some cedar dog bedding is the kind that you buy at pet supply stores. It has a little bit of a insect repellent, and in the event you saw how those fecal sacs were. It really helps keep the nest clean because if the fecal sacs get onto the nest material, this little piece of material will just go out with the fecal sac. And it keeps the nests really nice and clean. And then another thing that we use is swim noodle. You cut these into 1-inch sections and then cut them in half. And they actually fit really well if you need to ever close a unit for whatever reason. Sometimes you'll close a unit off if you know it's not going to be used and you don't want anything else nesting in it, like you don't want to bother with the English house sparrows. But also there's tree swallows that are friends of ours, but they're not friends if you want to attract purple martins. Because if a tree swallow is in your purple martin house, he won't let your purple martins nest there. So sometimes you have to close, depending on if you got a tree swallow that's nearby, you'll close off your purple martin housing, and then you'll set up a little house like this, about 30 feet away from your purple martin house, and make sure that entrance hole is facing the house so that tree swallow can see that is an available cavity for them to use. And the one nice thing about these little bird houses is you can take them down and you can check them. And you can show grandchildren or great-grandchildren. And the one thing that we really need is to get the kids out from behind the video games and out into nature. Because there's not a lot of kids that are too interested in nature anymore, which is really unfortunate.
There's always a battle with tree swallows and bluebirds, it seems like.
Yep.
On.
Yep.
But the tree swallow is actually quite a
Yeah, they're
nice
nice.
bird. I like that.
They're a nice little bird.
Yeah.
I've got tree swallows at my house. Tree swallows and purple martins actually get along as long as they're not in
They
the
have
same.
separate facilities.
Yeah, and the tree swallow will alarm the purple martins to predators such as Cooper's hawks and anything else. They will sing and make noise, and they'll definitely alert them to those other predators. So yeah, and then what they recommend with these particular nest boxes, these I got from like the Minnesota Bluebird Society, I think that's what it's called. They recommend putting them in pairs, and you have one of these or have two of these 10 feet apart. One of them is supposedly going to be occupied by a bluebird, and one will be occupied by a tree swallow. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. So they sell those in pairs.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay, I have a question.
sure.
Is this one for the handicapped birds?
No. This is actually an owl guard. And owl guards just work in ways so that an owl can't reach in there and grab the bird. These are just little owl protectors. These gourds swing back and forth like this. So a purple martin will land on it, or if an owl will land on it, it will swing like that, and the owl won't be able to really reach into that nest area, into that gourd. And then there's a different kind of style house. And this is also an owl guard, but these don't. These swing back and forth, and so they won't. If an owl lands on here and tries reaching in here, this extension makes it impossible for them to reach the nestlings. Now, the interesting thing about purple martins is that they will always nest in the furthest corner from the hole. So if you notice, I've got these holes a little bit staggered. This top unit the nest will be in the opposite end, and the bottom unit, the nest will be on the opposite end of the hole. If they want to make their nests as far back and away from predators as they can. Two of the predators that we have in this area are the Cooper's hawk and the horned owl, but we don't have a lot. I haven't had many problems with owls, but I have a lot of problems with Cooper's hawks. I have a Cooper's hawk that lives just about a block away from me, who thinks my Purple Martin house is a smorgasbord, and they will actually wait for the evenings to come. And I was watching the martins come in with their fledglings one August evening, and one of the little martins was having trouble getting into his nest box. He was crying and making a whole bunch of noise. Finally he flew off and sat on the neighbor's shed. Not 30 seconds later did the Cooper's hawk fly over that shed, grab that martin, and took him. So I guess I'm a proponent to survival of the fittest. So I guess that wasn't much of a loss for me, but I don't. Nobody really likes to see that.
That hawk will pluck a little bird in just a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
And it's all over, and he's got his supper.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
There's always enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah, the world is full of monsters always.
Whatever animal
Yeah.
has to, they have to protect their.
So any other questions?
How do they, when they're gonna ban these, how do they catch these martins?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. The male martin, male and female, will both come back to the nest at night. So when the night comes, they will stay in the unit with their eggs or babies, and they can equip these houses with just a trap door. So once all the martins are in for the night, they'll just flip the trap door down, and then they'll wait until morning to ban them in the morning. So they'll lower the house down and open up each unit, take out the birds, and then just set them free.
Do they get all excited then? And, I mean, are they fearful of
Purple martins have evolved to be used to humans. I mean, we've been their ally, and that's why it's important to have Purple Martin housing near human housing, because they've learned that if there's a human nearby, they're going to be watching out for them.
My hearing is so poor, I don't even hear half of what he says.
That's why it's important. That's why it's important to have people watching Purple Martins. Because it's the thing that they're used to.
This town used to be just loaded with them. When I was a kid, they would, they'd be on the wires, they're just endless.
Yeah.
And we had a year where it was really a cold spring, and I just don't think there were any bugs. And if it was dry or something, but they left, and they have never come back in such numbers since.
Unfortunately,
in just 1 year, I was amazed by that.
They probably didn't leave. They probably died.
Oh, really? Do you
Yes.
think so?
What happens in the spring is the Purple Martins will come back, and they're predisposed that the older martins will come back earlier and the younger ones will come back later. Now, if we have a cold snap, that will kill them. If they don't have food for 3 days, they will.
Really?
Yep.
So then that explains it, because
Yep.
they come back to the same place.
They
every
come back
year.
to the same place
Well,
year
that's-
after year.
yeah, because
Yeah, and
it's
as
just-
long as they successfully fledge young, they'll come back to the same unit. Now, if I had this unit and it got predized by a raccoon or a hawk, and they lost all their babies and all their eggs, and they fly all the way back down to South America with nothing, they're not going to come back to my place.
Oh, sure.
They're going to find a
Something
different
else.
place. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they didn't succeed.
Oh, they realize that.
Yep.
They know-
Yeah, that's why it's always important to get your.
It's got to take years then
Yep.
before that
Yep.
they reestablish.
Yeah, and that's what we're hoping to have happen.
Sure.
And now what's happened is, the martins are gone, and the housing that's up there is filled with European or English house sparrow nests. And if those nests are in there, they won't nest over the top of an English house sparrow nest. Because
Oh,
English house sparrows pack that compartment full. I mean, when I first started out, I had left my house and over the 4th of July weekend, and I had 5 English house sparrow nests in units like this.
really?
And they were completely full of material. Now, the purple martins won't use those nests because they can't even get in to turn around. Whereas the English house sparrow is a little bit smaller. And they use that, and that's just their style of nest. So,
I can't imagine a bird flying over the water oceans
That's amazing,
and
yeah.
never perch or anything.
never perch or anything, no.
It's amazing.
Day or night, it's a day and night flight.
They have to be pretty
Can you
strong.
imagine?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't
You
imagine.
got to be pretty smart too.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think? How do they find the route that they want to cross? I mean, is it something they can smell? Do they remember it? Or-
You know, I really have no idea. I mean, especially that they don't take the same route back. You know, I mean, I could see if they stopped at the same sites. It'll be interesting to see what the study says when we, next year, when we recapture the birds that we've had those geolocators on. If they're using the same sites, I'm thinking that they use geographic areas. You know, like that up in the Yucatan Peninsula, that bridge that I showed you. You can see that from outer space. So it's really an obvious landmark from up in the air. And if they're using landmarks like that, you know, that might be one thing. I've noticed a lot of the times on their route, it seemed like there were Ys in the river. So like points or a mountain or a lake that was nearby. That was kind of out of the ordinary from the regular landscape that was out there. And, you know, I researched these maps and I was, you know, using Google Earth to try to find out where they were. And, you know, that was what I found most often. You know, that dam that I talked about in northern Brazil, that's a very big reservoir that's attached or behind, you know, that dam is holding back. That's a big lake which is very out of the ordinary of the regular landscape because most of it is just solid trees.
That bridge that they stay on, where do they perch?
Just-
Underneath it?
If they can go underneath, they will, but sometimes they'll just perch right on the top. You know, and that's why there's so much concern about the casualties from cars because I mean, there's people who don't have the amount of interest that we do with birds, and they'll just think it's fun just to floor it through a flock of birds and see how many they can hit.
No,
So,
I always have that.
yeah.
Well, have they left now?
Mine have. I don't know.
They have already.
Mine have left. I have one nest left that has 3 babies, and they're still the parents are still here, but the rest of the nests have all left.
Huh.
I used to always say August 8th is when they could either be here or they could be gone any day. And last year it was the 23rd of August when they left, because I remember that day because it was the day I had my ankle surgery, and I saw them the night before, and when I came home that night, they weren't there. So it was August 23rd last year, and this year it was August 8th.
I don't know if there's any bird left there. Some of them have looked and some say they aren't
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I'd like to check that out if I.
So,
Yeah, life has got to get kind of dull for you when they leave them for a while. It's got to,
Yeah.
you have
I used
to have a transition
Yeah,
period or something.
you kind of get like a postpartum
Well, sure you do.
depression disorder.
Yeah, they become quite a passion with you, I can see
Yeah,
that.
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you know, the house that I have goes up on that pulley.
Yeah.
So for me in Grand Forks, I can't take a pellet gun and just get rid of those little
No.
pesky sparrows. So I have to trap them. Well, that means I have to set the trap, you know, crank it back up, wait until that trap is tripped, and then, you know, take it back down. So I mean, on a Saturday or Sunday, I might have that house up 6 or 7 times.
Oh, sure.
And purple martins don't seem to be bothered by that at all. because they know that I'm taking care of them. And if
Yeah,
I
it's
do
funny
catch
that
a
they
purple
seem to
martin,
develop a sense.
I just let them go, and they'll be back right in the nest cavity that they
But
were.
there's one bird I was disgusted with, and the one that makes the nests out of mud.
Oh, yeah.
Barn swallow.
Yeah, the barn swallow,
They
yeah.
came,
Yeah,
yeah, and they remember them, they
and
come
they're
back, the whole
persistent.
flock
You
comes
can
back.
knock them down and knock them down, they
I
keep
know,
building.
and they will not give up.
No, they don't.
They-
They don't.
Yeah,
You can
I,
knock a nest down, and by a short while, they got it back.
unfortunately, the barn swallows, and then, they get a bad rap because, all that they're trying to do is they're trying to provide a home for themselves.
Yeah.
But
I suppose.
unfortunately, it's always,
Wrong place.
unfortunately, it's in the wrong place for us human beings, above our door or window or,
It's the wrong place, they
Yep.
planted on our house.
yep,
And
So-
they all come back the next year.
yep, and then they become more
They
aggressive
came
to
with their
humans.
babies. I mean, grown-up kids. Whoa!
Yeah, when I put up the house on the greenway, they were concerned.
You know,
They were
it's
gonna
they
take
grow on you.
Saturday.
We had a cabin up in the woods and we had moose horns. And every evening, these swallows would sit and they'd sit there and watch us. We'd watch them, they'd watch us. And you get to thinking now, 6 months from now, maybe there's some family in Argentina that's watching these same two birds on their porch somewhere, They were barn swallows.
Yeah.
But it really is amazing that such small birds can travel those distances
I
and
know.
all those perils, and still survive. Their losses have got to be terrific. So, what would you say is the lifespan of a martin?
Well, they say
If
that
everything goes right.
the oldest martin that has ever been recorded was 13 years old.
Oh my, really?
But their average expectancy is only 3 or 4 years.
Oh, I suppose.
Because-
there's so many hazards.
And they say 50% of the fledglings that you fledged this year won't make it back. And 50% of the adults won't make it back.
Really?
So it's a really,
Yeah, they have to be successful.
so they have to be successful.
Yeah,
Yeah, because otherwise it just wouldn't,
yeah, the
it
species would
wouldn't, it
disappear.
wouldn't pan out. And that's why their nest size is important. If only 50% of, 4 eggs make it, that's only 2.
Right.
And if only one of the parents make it, that's, that's not gonna be very long before their population would be in really
Oh,
bad
yeah,
order.
you bet, absolutely.
I think it is.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, when did you get started in this?
I started, in 1984, my parents moved into town, and before that, my grandmother had a purple martin house that my dad had built. My dad had purple martin houses out on the farm for years, never got it. But when we moved into town, we had martins, and we had martins. I moved out of there in 1991, and I was never really fond of martins because
No, you took them for granted, I suppose.
yeah, you have the smallest hands, and you get to be the one to clean out the house. The houses back in 1984 weren't like this, that you open up. I take a rake and a water hose to clean up my house. Take the rake, dump out the nest material, wash it out with the water hose, get some industrial dishwasher detergent, sprinkle it in there, clean it out with a brush, and that's all I do. I mean, it's clean, it's done. And then I dump in this nest material about
So you got, you have to prime it.
yeah, prime it up, and then, if you're still trying to attract the martins, I put the mud in. I don't put the mud in all the time, but if I see my numbers are kind of going down, or I want to make sure that I attract a few more, I put the mud in. And that definitely worked on the greenway. I adopted a site out at Turtle River. They had a 6x6 unit. I think it's a mausoleum grandpa-style purple martin house like they have in the backyard here. And they had that house up for at least 5 years, and they had only ever attracted 1 pair per
But they
year.
never put anything.
They never put anything in. This year,
I had that happen to me years ago.
yep, this year when I adopted that site, I put the straw and the material in and I mudded it. I have 6, no, I have 4 pair out there, and they fledged 16 young. So, yeah, I mean, just in 1 year, so
Yeah.
I'm really excited about adopting that site.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened to your leg?
This
I
is,
didn't do nothing to it, it just happened out by itself.
She don't hear very good, so you have to.
Oh, okay.
Did you break it?
So how did they find you? Have you been doing this for?
No, I just started this in December, and then Heidi Hughes came here and did a Bluebird.
Oh, yeah.
And I emailed Eunice and said, yeah, I'd do a program for you guys.
Oh, that's a good way to maintain your hobby.
Across America, they're working with retirement communities to put up housing, because the one thing that
Then they put in a cement.
retirement communities have is people who've got time on their hands, they
Right.
watch the birds.
Right.
So that's,
You know, always looking at some different.
I mean, and they put it on, some people are putting together housing with them, you know, they can paint these gourds. If they're natural gourds, they need to be painted.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, you can decorate them, you can do whatever you want. I mean, I'm kind of the school that, well, I'm of the modern school where you gotta have something that doesn't take quite so much time to maintain.
Right.
So these, I dump out the nesting material, and I dump them in a big bucket with a 10% bleach solution, leave them there for a couple of days, wash them out. And then that's it. But with the natural growths, you have to soak them in
Oh, yeah, that's
sulfate,
gotta
and you
be
have to paint them, and you have to, it's a lot more work than I'm willing to
I
do.
would
A
think
week
so.
from Monday, I get my new knee.
Oh, really?
I'm hoping